Good afternoon. Welcome to the State of Research. It's really an honor and a privilege to present on behalf of the Research and Education Institute and all of the researchers and innovators in the University Hospitals Health System. I think that you'll find today to be a very uplifting session, because what we can start out is that the state of research is very strong. And it was really inspiring to work with Yi Fritz and her team in trying to catalog the amazing accomplishments of our faculty in 2021. I think it is important to emphasize, although many of us spend much of our day focused on healing, especially from the complex operational standpoint, that teaching and discovering does represent 2/3 of our mission. And advancing the science of health is certainly central. Many of you know that in 2016, we embarked on a strategic plan for academics, both research and education, and really developed a very strong statement guiding us in this space. A next generation academic health system dedicated to accelerating discovery, innovation, and translation of scientific breakthroughs, which address unmet clinical needs and enhance the lives of our patients, our community, and the world. And what I hope to be able to convince you by the end is that our faculty, our researchers, are making enormous impact in the community and advancing the health of our patients and their families. It's obviously important to emphasize that we have been involved in pioneering medical research for a long time. It's part of our legacy, and it remains very strong. Now, one of the questions that we often get is, why is research so important? And as we have traveled to Florida over the last 4 months to raise money as part of our campaign, I have given a talk in many venues to really break down that research is all about hope. It's about hope for patients and their families when they don't have good options left. Because the way you get the future drugs, devices, and cell-based therapies is through research protocols. Those research protocols are available in academic medical centers and health systems, but they start at the bench and they translate to the bedside. And we're going to go on a journey today to show how that happens. Clearly, it's important because it enhances health system differentiation. It creates competitive advantage, which attracts patients and ultimately is a very important margin generator for the health system. It improves healthcare outcomes by implementing evidence-based practices. And most importantly, as I look out at you, and it's so nice to see all of you in 3 dimensions, it attracts healthcare leaders, researchers, innovators, healthcare partners, and also trainees. It produces intellectual property, which is very important. It drives philanthropy. And in many ways, when we meet with patients and they talk about their grateful physicians, the most common basis for a gift is someone who is researching a new discovery. And importantly, although we don't focus on it as much, it creates very important biomedical ecosystem impact. A variety of studies have shown that a grant dollar invested produces about $2.6 in return. Now, just some high-level research statistics for 2021. Our total research expenditures, including both UH and CWRU-related NIH federal dollars to UH faculty, is about $170 million in 2021. It's important, we'll talk a little bit about it. Our base year that we're very focused on is 160. So we're continuing to grow, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Kumar Mukesh, our post-award expert, has indicated to me that based on our incredible grant attainment in the latter half of 2021, we're going to be looking at somewhere anticipated to be about 182 million in 2022. So it continues to grow. We have about 983 faculty members participating in some form of research. We've produced over 1,300 peer-reviewed articles, had 90 invention disclosures, And as I look at Grace McComsey, we are the #1 clinical trials site in clinicaltrials.gov with over 3,294 open studies in 2021, despite COVID. And we'll talk a little bit about that. We've invested $8.3 million in expanding our immunotherapy and wet lab research capabilities in this very building, which we'll talk about. Will open in the fall of this year. Sponsored research to UH alone from foundations, industry, pharma, and biotech is about $72 million. And we created 144 new research jobs. And we'll talk about why that's important in a few moments. UH's commitment to the academic mission is strong and very robust. If you look across education, faculty support, academic recruitment, distinctive programs, many in collaboration with the schools, such as the Case Comprehensive Cancer Center, the Institute for Computational Biology, Brain Health, and others. CWRU affiliation in the faculty practice plan amounts to about $171 million. And most importantly, you can see year-over-year growth in the investment of this academic mission, which is very important. Now, the UH Research and Education Institute was an output of our strategic plan in 2016. And this was an effort to really develop a standalone pre-award, post-award UH Research Education and Institute that would allow us to move forward and grow in a more independent manner as we moved from a primary to a multi-affiliate with the school. Now, we have certainly strengthened our relationship with the school, and we'll talk about that momentarily. But you can see all of the individuals here who drive this pre- and post-award structure and clinical research within this institute. Now, we participate in the full spectrum of research activities, and it's really important to point that out, from scientific discovery to drug device and diagnostic development to clinical research, and then the latest in our focus, how we impact the community in the world through health outcomes and health services research, which many of you know is the basis right now of a 16-week strategic planning process to strengthen a nascent program that we have. Now, in 2016, many of you served on an advisory group which helped to identify centers of excellence. It was very important that we understood that we could be very strong in several focus areas, but not doing everything. And one of those efforts was to identify about 5 centers of excellence that we were going to focus our investment and recruitment in, of course, always thinking about areas outside if they were once in a lifetime chances. Let's talk about those centers of excellence. The first, our Cardiometabolic Center of Excellence, under the leadership of Sanjay, Ian Neeland, and Sadir. I see them here today. This is really an effort to improve the outcome of cardiovascular endpoints in patients with diabetes, a real combination of both cardiobolic and metabolic focus. And I think one of the greatest outputs of this effort has not only been the new clinical programs to see patients with diabetes and cardiovascular disease, but their incredible success on the research front with the Achieve grant that was funded, an $18.2 million NIH initiative to transform cardiovascular outcomes, social determinants of health. And we'll talk a little bit more about that grant a little later. Al Lerner is here today, and we are so proud of his group and his collaborators to be a member of the $15.4 million Cleveland Alzheimer's Disease Research Grant Center to accelerate research of Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. But it's also important to point out that the same center is establishing a brain health initiative to increase minority participation research within Fairfax community through the UH Otis Moss Health Center. Other centers of excellence, Dr. Sloan is here, includes that of brain cancer. We have funded 5 pilot projects since 2018. And as many of you know, Andy has been able to really draw very elite and limited trials related to modified poliovirus, for instance, in GBM, as well as immunotherapy trials, which have gone a long way in attracting patients nationally and internationally to UH and the Seidman Cancer Center. One of the most exciting areas that spans not only cancer, but non-cancer, but we have Ted and Alex and John Laterio here today, is that of immunity, both in the adult and pediatric immunotherapy populations with cancer. You see amazing, really amazing progress through work that Ben Tomlinson has done, Reshmi, related to CAR-T and novel approaches, not only in CD19, but in BAFF that will play out not only in mantle cell lymphomas, but also in autoimmune disease such as Sjogren's and lupus. Clearly, Alex and John have been very busy as well with new phase 1 trials in metastatic osteosarcoma, as well as a SMART CAR-T cell program in solid tumors. Exceedingly exciting on the heels of great investment through the Wesley Center in immunotherapy. Imaging has been a cornerstone as a center of excellence. I look out and see Donna Plecha, Mark Griswold, Leo Bittencourt, and others who are really driving incredible work related to improving our ability to stage, diagnose the severity of a variety of cancers, including pancreatic cancer, brain tumors, prostate cancer, breast cancer, and many others. And R01 attainment in this field with many new recruits has been breathtaking. And I'd like to congratulate that group and many others that are not pictured here for their work. And it's very important, again, to point out these research observations and imaging protocols translate into the attraction of patients into our health system. Now, all of this success comes from partnering. One must partner to be successful. And we have amazing partnerships, of course, with our closest partner, Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine, over 127 years, which, as I mentioned, has included the Institute for Computational Biology, the Center for AIDS Research, the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, and of course, how can we not forget, most importantly, as Grace ascends into her new position, the Clinical and Translation Science Collaborative, which is one of our largest grants. We also have very important global partnerships. We thank, of course, Dr. Jonathan Stamler for his work introducing us to really the first non-tropical communicable disease relationship with Oxford in the United States, which is the Oxford Harrington Rare Disease Center. We'll touch on that a little bit later. Partnerships with Morgan Stanley, both nonprofit and for-profit through Jonathan, and also a very exciting educational partnership with the Technion in Israel, the MIT equivalent in Israel, predominantly for education, but also extending into research now. Statewide partnerships have also been important, and many of you know about the Cleveland Innovation District. We'll touch on that a little bit later, which brings many institutions in the city and the state together. I do want to really call out and emphasize the great success of the CWRU-UH partnership, especially since our reset dialogue that started really in 2018, when Pam Davis and I, along with Arthur Rubenstein and Tom Enders, sat down over 12 to 16 months to really rework the relationship that was on a little bit of a bumpy ground from 2016. And of course, under the leadership of our CEO, Cliff McGarrian, working closely with President Kaler, Stan and I working together, we had a record time of reaffiliation this year. We saved 6 months, did it in a little over 2.5 months, signing a 10-year affiliation agreement that will extend until 2031. And this relationship is stronger than ever. And I would like to thank Stan and his team for that. UH and CWRU are working together very effectively through the Joint Strategic Leadership Committee. And I want to thank all of the individual participants, Bill Sheeman, Matt Lester, Mark Osceola, Yi Fritz, Sonia, Bob Salata, for helping us come together I don't see Deb Slogar, who needs to be on this as well, because she's working in the background here very intently. And this is a group that gets together every 2 weeks. And this group is focusing on recruitment and retention, establishing policies and procedures for joint investment. We've reviewed 17 applications. We've approved 14 recruits. This group works so well together that every meeting that's scheduled for an hour always ends with, we're going to give you back 25 minutes because we did the business, we made the decision, and we moved on. And that's a lot of hard work of Matt and Sonia in the background, making sure these agreements are going forward. This is investing $4 million a year in research activities of the institution, $4 million every year going forward for this 10-year affiliation. Very important. Of course, we have to call out the CTSC. This is a grant that returns us $8 million a year. And since its inception in 2007, $178 million to support clinical research activities, infrastructure for clinical and translational research, training, entrepreneurship programs, and others across all of the institutions that you see here, not only UH and Case Western, but Metro, CCF, the VA, all working together to advance this. Of course, Grace is very, very busy with renewal. Many of you are involved in that renewal. And Grace, we wish you the best of luck. And we know that you will refund on the first try. No pressure. So the Cleveland Innovation District may not be known to all of you. So I want to spend just a little bit of time. Many of you heard first about the Cincinnati Innovation District. And of course, all of us up here said we are a stronger biomedical research community. What about Cleveland? So the really great news is the politicians listened to us. And we have really come together very well with Governor DeWine, Lieutenant Governor Husted, and many others to bring funding to UH, to CCF, CWRU, CSU, and Metro in the areas of focus that you see listed here. But I want to thank David Sylvan, above all, for relentless negotiation with Jobs Ohio to bring us an agreement along with Mukesh Jain that is a research and product innovation-based program that has very achievable metrics for us, which very likely could bring us additional funding beyond the $17.5 million that we were garnered in the first wave. And that's because of our great success. We were obligated to invest $10 million in investment in research infrastructure in 10 years. We did 8.3 in the first year. We're supposed to create 200 research jobs over 10 years. We created 144 in the first year. We're supposed to grow research expenditures 3% per year, compounded over the whole 10 years of 235. We hit $13 million increase in the first year. We're on target for a $22 million increase in the second year. And then as I look at our board chair, Art Anton, thank you so much for coming today. We were supposed to invest $30 million in board-directed research investment in drug development over the 10-year period. And Art Anton ushered that through the board in the first year. So thank you very much, Art. We are investing in research and we are meeting the targets of Jobs Ohio. And I can tell you on my calls quarterly when we report our outcomes, Jobs Ohio says to David and to me every time, you are blowing away your partners. We're putting pressure on the partners because we're meeting our metrics. I also want to call out two very special groups. I know that Jory Mintz is online today on Zoom. Jory's team, the grant writing team that's working very closely with us and UHRNE, has created an incredible energy and momentum of grant attainment, exceeding $50.8 million in 2021, growing from only $10 million in 2019. Many of you know, especially now in the COVID era, RFPs are coming out literally every day from PCORI and AHRQ and HRSA and NIH and private foundations. You can't get the money if you don't apply and throw a dart at the dartboard. and our darts are being thrown at the dartboard, and you'll see momentarily all of the successes in this space. So I want to thank Jory and her team. UHRNE has helped supporting 2 additional grant writers, and we need to grow Jory's team, because the more grant writers and folks we have, the more we are gaining. I also would really like to thank our academic marketing team that I know is here today, Lisa Heckel and others that are here. Department research websites, almost half are completed and going on. Clinical trial promotion, a clinical trial finder redesign, an academic dashboard, and most importantly, because we just got an update very, very recently, was on the alumni databasing efforts to enhance our reach out to alumni for fundraising. Of course, GMA video development was extremely important for recruitment of residents and fellows during the pandemic. And we had 63,000 views of medical students for enhancing recruitment efforts. What I'd like to do over the next approximately 20 minutes is to really go through the areas of research that we've talked about: scientific discovery, drug and device development, clinical research, and impacting the world, to show some of the successes and accomplishments in 2021, because I want to convince you that they truly are breathtaking. I want to start out with one which is particularly inspirational to me, because Fabio Caminelli and I were recruited to UH almost at the same time. And to see his growth is absolutely breathtaking. Research grew from 17.3 million in 2019 to 28.3 million this year in 2021, listed under the Digestive Disease Research Center are all of the group R01 projects, multi-PI, P01s, and P30s, U54s, T32s, and T35s, and a P50 GI Spore. It is truly breathtaking of the nature of the scientific discovery, predominantly, of course, in his expert field of immunity, of GI disease, inflammatory bowel disease, and others, but also in many other areas, also involving cancer. Fabio is a real treasure, and we'd like to call out his associate directors, Teresa Pizarro and Claudio Fiocchi. And I hope that they are here and listening today. Of course, bench to bedside research is extremely important. And I look out and see many members of the GI Spore team who are with us today. $25 million in funding since 2011. The mission to reduce deaths from GI cancers by discovering new methods of prevention, detection, and treatment. There are only 5 GI Spores in the US: Harvard, Hopkins, MD Anderson, Vanderbilt, and here. And I want to congratulate Sandy and many others who are joining us today in that. And I'm going to touch on a specific aspect of this with a special attention notice later. So please stay tuned. I also really want to focus on the success of one individual who joins us today live, Jordan Winter, who was here to really focus on this concept of how can you take observations to the bench and drive them to the bedside in diseases that have no hope. And that's pancreatic cancer, a survival of less than 5% in a 5-year period. Jordan has identified a very important target, IDH1, which is very important in the tumor microenvironment, where an allosteric inhibitor of IDH1 prolongs survival in mice. Of course, however, too many of us are mouse doctors and don't get that into the bedside. And I'm so pleased and so proud of Jordan and his team for pursuing, through the Gateway Foundation and John and Peggy Garson, to fund a clinical trial that would be run by David Bajor to treat 15 patients with resectable pancreatic cancer with a combination of isositinib and conventional chemotherapy. This is exactly what today is about. It is taking discovery science, but then saying, why are we different than a university? We're different because it's not discovery for discovery's sake. It's discovery to get to a patient to make a difference. So congratulations, Jordan, and we hope to report out the results of this trial maybe at a State of UH research in 24 months. Another important bench to bedside research call out, Quentin Pan and Ted Technos and the head and neck Spore team. This is a resubmission, I understand, with a very good score. So we look forward to great announcements, 3 core projects, and very, very glad to see that you still see the importance of cardiovascular disease and head and neck disease by looking at stroke risk in patients who have had head and neck cancer and radiation. Well, drug, device, and diagnostic development is really important. Many of us are good at discovery, but we fall flat when it comes to commercialization efforts. And of course, I want to call out the great work of Jonathan Stamler, who's joined us as the president of the Harrington Discovery Institute. This is about the best scientists with the most promising discoveries, moving them through world-renowned industry experts to help create new medicines, and then getting these new medicines into clinical trials. This is a national and now international program, including Canada and the United Kingdom. 3,200 applications over the last 10 years. Jonathan will be celebrating his 10th anniversary in May with this. 304 institutions have applied. We have 31 companies, 17 drugs in clinical trial right now, and 12 have been licensed to pharma. This is something, obviously, drug discovery and development is difficult. It takes time, but we are starting to see the outcomes. Let's look just at a little bit at 3 separate areas of accelerating therapeutics, advancing COVID-19 cures. Many of you recall we had 250 applications for COVID in an emergency sort of RFP, and we funded 5 of these. 4 are in the clinic right now from great institutions like Mayo, Columbia, Rockefeller, UH, and Yale University. I talked a little bit about our Oxford Harrington rare disease efforts. This is some rare disease success that you see here from 4 investigators who are either in preclinical phase or pre-IND phase and are just about to enter clinic for rare disease. And one, of course, a very exciting gene therapy trial that will be run out of Oxford, Boston Children's, and Rainbow. And then finally, in looking at Andrew Pieper, our brain health and brain therapeutics leader, promising dementia medicines and devices in the pipeline. Really important here to see the advances with Jerry Rook already in phase 2, Stephen Strittmatter in phase 1, and Jonathan also with a device that's presently in clinical use right now. So very, very promising, getting these discoveries into patients. Would also like to call out UH Ventures. This is the diagnostic and device focused efforts. You see many of the portfolio companies are listed here, and the shared IP and tech transfer office outcomes. Startups and investment exits are very important to talk about. We will focus momentarily on a very exciting one with Lucid Diagnostics, but also want to congratulate Sandy on the acquisition of Rodeo Therapeutics, which was initially supported by Harrington Discovery Institute. Rodeo was acquired by Amgen in March of 2021. Well, what about clinical research? We already talked about the fact that with 3,200 studies, we are the #1 clinical trial site in Ohio. But I really want to focus for a moment on the amazing work of the Clinical Research Center in its efforts related to COVID-19. Many of our colleagues in institutions in the US retreated from research during the pandemic. How can we enroll patients? How can we consent? How can we follow up? And what Grace's team did is innovate and double down on doing research. And we'll look at some of those efforts, tactics in a moment. But just want to again point out Site 001 for remdesivir, 2 vaccine trials led by Bob Salata, Pfizer and AstraZeneca, a biorepository which led to a very big grant that we'll look at momentarily, and many other studies of oral agents and others in COVID. Now, what were these tactics to enhance clinical research? Well, one of the great ones was really reaching out to pioneer e-consent, teleconsent, follow-up through telehealth, really pushing IRBs to understand that if we're going to do research, we need to do this in a new way in the confines of the pandemic. Grace also developed a centralized COVID-19 research hotline and a centralized COVID invitation database. And then I think something that's very, very clever, we don't think about it much, but it matters to our research subjects, is a Greenfire ClinCard master agreement that allows us to pay our research subjects according to IRB approved payments in a process which is both HIPAA compliant, IRS compliant, and allows our research subjects to be compensated appropriately. This is one of my favorites, and I'm sorry that you and I left off the picture of me driving the van, actually pretending to drive the van. But this is our only two in the country clinical trial Winnebago, which is the UH Mobile Clinical Research Unit. And this is actually very important because it brings clinical research to rural areas and also to underrepresented communities of color who are skeptical of participating in research, but we can go to the community in education efforts and enroll patients there. This RV Winnebago includes 2 private exam rooms, a centrifuge, a -80 freezer and refrigerator. It allows us to bring reagents and drugs to patients, and also has secure Wi-Fi and a wheelchair lift. Really enhances the ability of us to do research across the community. And I want to congratulate Grace and her team for making this a living mobile unit, which we do like to drive around the city to Cleveland Guardian games and Browns games and say, research is alive and well, and it will come to you. Well, what about health outcomes and health services research? This is an interesting, almost paradox. As Marlene and I want to really call out Marlene Miller, our chair of pediatrics, who's really one of our card-carrying certified health outcomes and health service researchers because of her joint appointments at Bloomberg School of Public Health at Johns Hopkins, 800 faculty strong, that really embraced health outcomes and health services research. We have a small but very mighty group of health outcomes and health services researchers here, you'll see momentarily. But we're in the midst right now of a strategic plan to really grow this, actually develop a new center for health outcomes and health services research within UHR&E, which is going to take this to an even greater level. And you might say, is that possible? Because I'm going to share successes with you, which are somewhat mind-blowing. I want to start out with Sharon Stein. One aspect of health outcomes and health services is knowing what are your outcomes, what are your efficacy and safety outcomes, and can we report and publish on them so we won't, as Sharon likes to say, make the same mistakes twice, or we'll learn what works and do it again. And Sharon Stein, together with Joe Sabick, founded UH Rises, Research and Surgical Outcomes and Effectiveness. And in 2021 alone, 226 papers were published by this group. And as you see, 16 active research residents and fellows, 10 grants, and most importantly for pipeline, all of the CWRU students who are interested in surgical research are gravitating to UH Rises because they're very, very productive. And as Joe has told me over and over again, UH surgery sweeps all of the citywide competitions in resident and fellow research because of the efforts of this UH Rises. So congratulations to Sharon and to Joe. Well, research impacting the community and really health services and implementation focus. That would be Sanjay Rajagopalan and Sadir Al-Kindi and others with their Achieve Greater P50. The goal of this grant is to reduce cardiovascular complications and hospitalizations by improving blood pressure, lipids, and glucose targets for African-American patients at risk of heart health issues. It is an incredible collaboration between the Cuyahoga Metropolitan Housing Authority, university hospitals, Case Western, Better Health Partnership. And it's an award that brought Sanjay along with co-PIs from Detroit and Wayne State, nearly $5 million to UH and CWRU, and an $18.2 overall $1 million grant. This is exactly what we need. We have class 1 recommended therapies for our patients, but they are not implemented in practice in the community. How can we improve? Of course, when we think about research impacting the community, we look to Grace and her incredible attainment, one of only 15 in the US, a $17 million award for researching COVID to enhance recovery. This is the problem of long COVID. And Grace is really focusing on what we call the post-acute sequelae of SARS-CoV-2 infection that is called PASC by NIH. The greatest outcome of this is Grace's ascension to the National Steering Committee and chair of the Intervention Committee. Our own Grace McComsey is doling out hundreds of millions of dollars in add-on funding. And she has assured me that many investigators in our Cleveland biomedical community will be able to gain access to these funds. So thank you in advance, Grace. Of course, we have to save quite a bit of time for Charles. Charles, we are so proud of you for the largest grant ever received by university hospitals, $48.5 million over 5 years from HRSA for a Center for Pediatric Everyday Readiness to support healthcare infrastructures to prepare and respond to the needs of children every day during disasters and in global health threats, including pandemics. Charles taught me that 80% of children in the United States who go to emergency rooms are not seen by physicians who are trained in pediatric emergency medicine. We need clinical pathways. We need telehealth solutions. This is part of Charles' work. Charles is incredibly devoted. He is tireless, and he has assured me that his group is working for even larger grants in the future. So congratulations, Charles. No pressure, but $48.5 million is certainly a grand slam. I also want to call out others, though, who are really focusing on this concept of patient-centered outcomes, and that would be Adonis Hajaz and Gautam Rao working together in one grant, empowering women and providers for improved care of urinary incontinence, the EMPOWER study, and also Adonis's work related to uterovaginal prolapse in a funded R01. This is a growing trend that I want you to appreciate. Many surgeons R01 funded in our institution and academic health system now. We are attracting and recruiting a great cohort of discovery scientists who happen to be surgeons. And that's just really terrific, and want to congratulate them on those outcomes. And then finally, and equally importantly, is the incredible impact that Jeff Dusick, Françoise Adon, and her team have had related to a very systematic, deliberate, and very careful analysis of whole health interventions, integrative health interventions in, as you can see, very important here, the acuity study of acupuncture in the emergency room for acute pain management. And this is really important. And I spent 20 minutes with Jeff this afternoon in my office understanding the goals of this pilot R01 with the BetterNet group of investigators, including Vanderbilt, University of California, San Diego, and Irvine, to really roll this out in a much larger definitive grant, which is going to follow. Congratulations, Jeff and Françoise. This is one of multiple R01s that Connor Ho Health is bringing to us. Well, I want to spend a little bit of time on special recognition for Amitabh Chak, Sandy Markowitz, and Joe Willis. It is not frequent that we have three of our very own go to New York City and, as we say, get to ring the bell. And how did that exactly happen? Well, many of you know about Cologuard. Cologuard is on our TVs all the time. It's for colon cancer, but we have another big problem. Esophageal cancer is a cancer of obesity, and 30% of Americans are obese. Barrett's esophagus is a precancerous lesion, and detection of Barrett's had previously been limited to endoscopy. But only last week, new guidelines from the GI Society now say that this is the exact test that needs to be first line in the screening of Barrett's esophagus. This came from very important discovery work that was published in Science Translational Medicine. Many of you can log on, have and can log on to YouTube to actually see Amitabh swallow this balloon and withdraw it out to show that you can sample cells with great sensitivity and specificity after DNA testing. And it's really, I think, important to highlight this technology evolution was very fast. And of course, those of us who are in drug development are envious of the speed at which you accomplish this. This technology was highlighted in the NCI's director's report to Congress. It was licensed through my buddy. I guess I'll use the pointer once. Lishan Aklog and I were fellows together at Brigham and Women's Hospital. I was an interventional fellow and he was a heart surgeon. He came to bail me out in the lab on a number of occasions and is a terrific guy. Lishan is a very entrepreneurial and innovative cardiac surgeon who left cardiac surgery to develop medical devices. And when Sandy and Amitabh and Joe said to me, we're having a little bit of trouble licensing this device, I said to them, have you ever met Lishan? He's the CEO of PavMed. They acquire very interesting medical devices and bring this to 510K approvals very, very fast. Well, I remember them calling me. They went out to dinner with Lishan, and I think they signed a deal on his first visit. Congratulations, because it led to a Lucid Diagnostic NASDAQ IPO in 2021. And as many of you have been following, a commercial launch of EsoCheck, EsoGuard, and only last week, this recommendation from the American College of Gastroenterology in its updated practices. I think we should have a round of applause for the team. And we hope to follow along and understand that EsoCheck and EsoGuard will have a very interesting commercial, but I hope you'll do better than a box that has legs and arms in your commercial. We have new physician scientists who joined us, and it obviously gives me great pleasure to look out and see such an amazing group of individuals that have arrived already or who will be coming. And I want you to know that the strength of an institution is its people. It's all about the people. And I'm so proud of being able to interview almost every one of these individuals at some point in their process. These are young men and women, some more advanced in their careers than others, who absolutely have passion for their area. And there is nothing like coming out of a meeting after 20 to 30 minutes. They walk out of the room. I immediately text their chair or their chief, and I say, hire them. Right now, hire them. They're just amazing. And I think you're going to meet Randy Vince and Willie McClellan and Rebecca Obang. Dan is already here, and Yang Chen. These are incredible superstars. And as I look out into the audience, I already see James Ross, who will not be here till 2023, but is going to be a really strong member of our Department of Trauma, Acute Care Surgery, and Critical Care, who trained in the CVRI at UCSF, and will be working with Ken Remy, studying sepsis and lung injury and other things. Just terrific that recruitment is even now ahead a year out or two. I also want to call to mind all of those who were honored last evening. Only last evening in the Ford Auditorium at CWRU, Stan and I had the great fortune of honoring our faculty award recipients, our emeritus and emerita appointments, our faculties with initial appointment to an endowed professorships, our new full-time faculty, 254, and most importantly, as we talked about, our full-time faculty who were promoted to the associate or professorial level, which were over 98. I would also urge all of you who did not attend this event, please, when the video comes out, you have to listen to Sharon Stein and Crystal Tomei, who gave inspirational 5-minute talks about their careers, about their mentors, and what it means to be promoted, including, as Crystal said, she sang to us in her 5 minutes. And I just urge all of you, if you don't have a lot of time, fast forward to Crystal and Sharon. They were very uplifting. Academic promotion 98 during the pandemic, they are all listed here. This is the hard work, not only of these individuals, but the hard work of your department AP&T committees, the hard work of the AP&T committee of the school. It's very hard to explain to people who are not in academia that When your grants are rejected 80% of the time, your papers are rejected 80% of the time when you submit to your first journal, you're batting less than 200. Okay, so if you like baseball, if you're 300, you're in the Hall of Fame. If you're 200, you're in the minor leagues. These are individuals who are resilient, they're agile, they're nimble, they stay at it, and we have to celebrate their promotions. They all got beautiful UHRNE vests and a half bottle of Prosecco, courtesy of one of our board members, John Antonucci, who donated to all of the promoted faculty. Thank you all for attending that. Also want to, call out faculty with initial appointment to an endowed professorship: Agata, Jeffrey Janata, Leah Lojo, Donna Pletcha, Lan Zhu, Aaron Prowweller, Judy Mackel, Loretta Flynn, and Marina Magre. Some of you are here or are listening in. Thank you and congratulations. That's a very prestigious honor. I have 2 pages of select academic achievements, and I hope the theme that you see here is all about recognition. We don't thank you enough, we don't congratulate you enough, and we don't honor you enough. And I want to make sure that you leave here understanding that Charles and Henry, David, Jonathan, Sandy, Marjorie, Sanjay, Charles, John, and Jonathan, thank you for all of your accomplishments, especially to Jonathan Lass, receiving again a 5-year, $6.4 million grant to the National Eye Institute with Doug Rhee and others. This is a great accomplishment because of continuous funding in this space. And on the second page, to Sanjay Rajagopalan, Sanjay Ahuja, my own lab, especially to Yunmei Wang and Ed Plow. This is unusual, but it is a sign of a very strong community. This is a program project with UH and CCF, 2 CCF investigators. I am the third. Yunmei is a core. You can work together with our competitors clinically for research success. The Cleveland Alzheimer's Research Center, Alan, Martha, Andrew, and Mark Cohn, Asif Sheikh in neurology, Dan Spratt, and Rose Gubituzzi-Klug. I think it's really important to point out nothing is more exciting to look at that front page of your New England Journal when it comes in the mailbox and you see Rose's first author article in there. That's really impressive. So congratulations, Rose. So looking ahead as we wind up here now, and then we'll have time for a few questions. What is ahead? Well, our strategic plan in launching of the new UHCWRU Health Services and Health Outcomes Research Center. It's something that we're in the midst of. We have a very important meeting with Stan and our Manat team on Friday to continue to bang this out. And I think that we're in really good shape to have a really terrific joint center. We're very excited as I look at Ted Technos for the new Wesley Center for Immunotherapy. We have a new leader for that. We also have wet lab expansion. We've heard you, we need more wet lab space on the 6th floor. This should accommodate, depending on junior, senior, at least a half dozen to 8 investigators. That should be a go live by September 2022. And Yi Fritz has guaranteed me that it is going to be the most beautiful lab setting in the Wolstein building because we have the best colors, the best finishes, and the best lab benches. So it's going to be great. And then, of course, we want to augment alternative revenue streams for academics. This is really, really important. We have to create more self-sustaining, evergreening mechanisms of funding. We have incredible attainment, but non-federal sources through Jory's teams, IP and commercialization, ventures, Neil Wyant, David Sylvan, philanthropy, of course. I am so sick of driving across Alligator Alley in 4 trips this winter, but we are raising money as fast as we can in the silent phase of this very large campaign that we'll announce to be able to raise more money to support this. But I think the most important thing is to thank all of you. This is all your work. Yi and I, it was a labor of love to put this together. More labor from Yi than from me, and a lot of love from us together to all of you. So we want to congratulate you, and a round of applause to all of you. I think we have time for questions. I was told by Yi that I had exactly 42 to 46 minutes. I went over, I'm sorry, but we do have time for questions. So any questions at all? We also have Nicole monitoring the web. So from Zoom, if anybody has questions there, we can take them, but happy to take any questions. Joe.
What about big ticket commercial items? For example, as you know, we're thinking about imaging, visual scanning, that sort of thing. The SIG process is laborious, it's slow,
yep.
and your win rate is low. But
yep.
yet we badly need some of these very big pieces of equipment.
Right. So the question for those on Zoom from Joe Willis from Pathology is, what about capital for equipment? Small instrumentation grants are laborious, difficult, most often fail. I think that's exactly where UHR&E has to come in. So, we have funds. We have money from Jobs Ohio. We have philanthropy. We have indirect returns. And the good news for you, Joe, is that your own chair, Cliff, sent me that proposal yesterday. And Yi and Deb and I are already rolling up the sleeves. We will fund what Cliff has sent. We're just going to find the appropriate sources. I do agree with you. There is technology that is reasonably priced, meaning the hundreds of thousands as opposed to multi-millions, that we can do. Obviously, when it gets to multi-millions, then we have bigger issues that we have to plan for. I think that our donors love innovation capital. They love thinking about things. What can I do to make a big difference and a big impact right now? And so I think that's something that I have to work on. Is my responsibility for the Cleveland Medical Center. Campus Raise is part of the big campaign. So we hear you, and we're going to help you in this instance. Bob.
Dan, great presentation. Thank you very much. And the progress is incredible. To sustain this, one of the elements is bringing up a new generation. We'll get to that in some of your slides, but what special programs, aside from recruitment of young rising stars, et cetera, especially at the training level?
So those on Zoom, Bob Salata, our chair of medicine, is rightfully asking and challenging me about the next generation and training of young students, fellows, and faculty. Bob, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I would say two things. One is Marlene and I are convinced that we must recreate the Harvard School of Clinical Effectiveness course that was at the Harvard School of Public Health that every resident and fellow who was interested in clinical search went to. It was a 6-week course, tuition about $10,000 to $12,000. Everybody went, they learned the basics of biostats, epi, trial designs, and brought a project of their interest out to be able to do something. I think we need something like that at Case Western. And given the inflation of Boston and cost of living, I will be working with Stan to make sure that tuition is appropriate for Cleveland. And so I think it can be done. It can be done efficiently, but there's no question that is critical. So that's one regard of clinical and health outcomes, health services research. I think the bigger question, and the one that's at my heart, because I went from an AHA, grant award to a K08 to an R01, is how can we make sure that we have the pipeline in basic and translational discovery through the K to the R stage, and that's more complicated, but we need to do it. And I think that the approach that Mukesh and I took was that UHR&E is responsible for helping department chairs and division chiefs for K packages, because you can't get the grant unless there's milestone-based institutional support. And that institutional support now for a physician, if it's not at the $600,000 level, they say the institution's not interested. So we have to do that. And we have to step forward with you and partner with you. And I think we have the ability to do that. Now, I'd have to say the K pipeline is slowed. You know, when I came from Boston, we brought 5K people with us, and those people all went on to independent funding. That has slowed, and so it needs to be reinvigorated. And I challenge all of the chairs and division chiefs who are here. It's hard. K is much riskier because the failure rate from K to R nationwide is only 25% advanced from K to R. Now, the K to R success rate in this institution is much higher. It's over 50% because we're a little more selective. It's easier to recruit somebody with an R01 in hand. It is easier, but we're missing out on that special career development that you get. I mean, I would hate to have been shut out by saying, no, we're not interested in Ks. So I want to commit to you that we are very interested. And I think that we have to continue to work on that. And the chairs who have packages have to be able to also say, I'm going to take some risks too on development of junior faculty. Ted Technos.
Just along those lines, Dan, and I think to Bob's question as well. Now, how do we encourage in our departments more T32s for residents and for insurance? I think, we have a cost of those.
Yeah. So Ted Technos, our president of Simon, is saying T32s, we need more. I agree with you. The solution for master's education and tuition for masters is T32s, which can be built, into that grant. So I agree with you. There are folks who have been very successful. Fabio has a digestive T32, Mukesh and Aaron Proweller have a cardiovascular. There are others. And we've talked about in health sciences and health services and health outcomes research that it's possible to develop a T32 in that area that's broad discipline. So I think we need to focus on those. You're absolutely right. That is great money for the development of junior faculty, federally funded. Agree. Jeff.
Excited about Epic coming in. Informatics, we need to make that data more.
Yeah. So Jeff Dusick is saying with Epic coming and informatics, we need to make that data more available. I agree with you. I think that we still have a great relationship with Jonathan Haynes and Mark Bino and the Institute for Computational Biology. We have many, many faculty members who have really used that to their advantage. Immerse and other databases, thinking of those at the VA, have really mined the VA database to great effect, especially our hypertension and nephrology colleagues and many others, and also Medicare databases. I look to David Zidar and others who really leverage that. So we need to do it. And I think that we're going to have to turn, as we have in the past, to Robert Erdley and his team and those to say, how are we going to lever the advantages of Epic for clinical research? Absolutely agree. Last comment, I think, from one of our best questioners, Cliff Harding.
I wanted to connect to the pipeline question and ask about, we discussed before about the possibility of an interdepartmental physician scientist training program, PSTP. UH is clearly the leader in research education and programs, residencies, fellowships in our region. But I really think, we're not achieving our potential. Medicine has done a good program, but it's hard for a lot of the other programs to get up to the critical mass. And I think that the answer, which is developing more and more nationally, is an interdepartmental PSTP. So we discussed that before. I'd like to see us consider it.
That's great. I think, Cliff, you just got yourself a job. No, I agree with you. I agree with you. And I think that these are great opportunities and we have to seize on them. I think, I want to conclude again by thanking Eve Fritz, Nicole and her team, Kim Fatica, the CWRU team for helping this today. We're going to get this thing into a YouTube loadable format. We'll get it out to our IR&D folks. We'll get it out to board members. We'll get it out to alumni. Those of you who weren't able to watch, send it to your friends and watch. I think it's important to celebrate. We don't do it enough. And we're going to try to keep doing it. Cliff actually texted me during this. He was watching part of this from London, where he is for reinsurance, and said to make sure that I send my regards from the team in London, Eric Beck and Cliff and Mike. And he's obviously incredibly supportive. It's really important. Nothing is more important than having the support of the board. Art is here. The board is invested, and our CEO is investing, and we're investing. The state's investing, and it's just our job to continue these great successes. So thank you, and look forward to next year.